Welcome back to the Dirt Show. Before we get to the serious matter relating to Israel, the topic for the show, I want to bring you up to date on the great perogi caper. Now, it may become one of the great cases in American history, like the gay baker cake case. But here's the update. Um, the pierogi guy or person refused to serve me. And I went to the head of the farmer's market and I said, I think you ought to have a rule that everybody who's given a license to have a booth at the farmer's market, it's not a right, it's a privilege, has to be willing to serve everybody. And he said that's a good idea, and he would bring it to the board. And so I'm hoping that it will be be resolved. But after my show on Wednesday, where I talked about this a little bit, it had happened on Wednesday, so it was fresh in my mind. I got a bunch of phone calls from people telling me, "Do you really know who you're dealing with? Do you know who this guy is? The guy who refused to serve you? He's a rampant anti-Semite and bigot. He's well known on the island. He's belongs to an organization, loose organization on Martha's Vineyard, that essentially supports Hamas. They justified the October 7th murders and massacres as a justified resistance to the occupation. But then they went even further. This group, of which he is a member, some people say he's a leader, um, protested a Jewish culture festival on Martha's Vineyard that was sponsored by Chabad, a Jewish religious organization. Nothing to do with Israel at all. It's just Jewish. They were serving Jewish food. I wonder if they were serving pierogi. I don't know, because it's a Jewish Polish dish, but a lot of Jews like it as well. Jewish music. They had Matisyahu, who's a great, Jewish folk singer. Tomorrow they're having Elon Gold, a great Jewish comedian who makes fun of Jews, and that's Jews always make fun of Jews. That's humor. Jewish art. And this guy and his group were the leaders in the campaign to prevent this Jewish cultural event from going on. So he's not only a rampant anti-Zionist, he's an anti-Semite. Now, the legal issue that this case raises, and there are a couple of letters about this, and we'll talk about it at greater length later, is whether denying service to a Zionist is like denying service to a Jew or to a black person or gay person. It's an interesting question. It's never been resolved by the courts. I can tell you personally, I'm a Zionist. My Zionism is an essential part of my Judaism. Now, Zionism doesn't mean you support Netanyahu, you support any of Israel's policies. You can be the most rampant anti-Netanyahu, anti-current government dissenter, but if you believe in Israel's right to exist as the nation state of the Jewish people, that's Zionism. So you can be completely opposed to every policy. You can be opposed to the occupation of the West Bank. You can be opposed to the policies on the Gaza. You can be opposed to everything. But if you believe that Israel has the right to exist, then you are a Zionist. I'm a Zionist. I'm a critical Zionist. I don't approve of everything Israel does. And so the question is Zionism, which is really a very strong component of Judaism, after all, Israel's flag is based on the Jewish prayer shawl, the Talit. Its two symbols are the Star of David and the menorah. Both are biblical Jewish symbols. Not every Jew is a Zionist. Not every Jew keeps kosher or observes the Sabbath. That doesn't make you not a Jew. It makes you maybe not such a good Jew, but you're a Jew. And not all Jews are Zionists, of course, and they have a right not to be Zionists. But I think discriminating against all Jewish Zionists is a form of discrimination that should be prohibited by law. Under Massachusetts law, national origin. So you can't discriminate against an Israeli, and you can't discriminate against a Jew. But can you discriminate against the Zionists? That's the question. It may be posed by my case. Maybe this will be the first court to ever answer that question. I think once the briefs go in and the evidence comes in, the courts will conclude that being a Zionist is close enough to being a believer in the Jewish religion, that it will be a protected class, but can't be sure of that at all. So the pierogi fiasco continues. People say, "Why are you wasting your time on this?" Well, if this person refused to serve a black person or a gay person or a transgender person, we'd all be up in arms about that. And of course, all the liberals were up in arms in the gay cake baker case, saying that businesses have no First Amendment right. Even in that case, liberals said, including on the Supreme Court, that they didn't even have a right to not bake a cake, which I don't agree with. I don't think a baker can be made to design a cake in a way that's positive to gays. That's speech. But we'll see what happens. It's interesting. Today's Monday. On Wednesday, we have the farmers market again. I'll go back. A journalist said he wants to go with me. I will try to buy the pierogi again. I will videotape his refusal. I'll be very polite about it. I may hand out leaflets about his own background and his history of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, so people will know who they're buying from, but I'm not going to try to stop anybody from buying his pierogi. I've gotten lots of offers from people now all over the world to make me pierogi. So we may have a pierogi party in which I get the homemade pierogi that people want to send me and compare it to his pierogi and see which is better, and then we'll publish the results. Okay, let's get to the serious subject. There's no question at all that the world is turning against Israel. Democrats today, a bunch of Democrats announced that they want to reassess America's relationship with Israel. And then not only talking about the squad now, I'm talking about, centrist Democrats. I don't know how centrist they are by Democratic standards. They're centrist, Elizabeth Warren. By any other standards, they're extreme radical leftists. I knew Elizabeth Warren when she was a conservative, a very mediocre scholar, a good teacher, and not an intellectual at all, and not somebody who knew anything about the Middle East. In fact, she came and asked me to give her a kind of tutorial on the Middle East. She wouldn't have known where the river or the sea is when people say Palestine will be free from the river and sea. She doesn't know anything about it, but she's a lefty and she's in Massachusetts, and she understands. She saw that when Senator Markey, a totally incompetent mediocrity, ran against Joe Kennedy Jr., Joe was so much smarter, so much more qualified, so much better. But in the Democratic primary, he lost because Joe was a moderate. And Markey deliberately moved to the left, very far left, and pretended he had left-wing views, which he really didn't have. And he won the election and really knocked, at the moment at least, Joe Kennedy out of politics, which is a great loss because he's a terrifically presentable and intelligent and thoughtful candidate. And I hope he does get back into politics and run for election again. Well, back to Israel. So, look, Hamas had a plan on October 7th. This is a brilliant plan. It's the most amoral plan, but absolutely brilliant, and it's worked. The plan was simple. Murder as many Jews, babies, rape as many women as possible. Don't worry, the anti-Israel people will still support you, and they did on October 7th and 8th. Already 13 groups at Harvard, including Amnesty International, feminist groups, gay groups, supported Hamas for what it did and blamed Israel for what it did. And they knew that. And then they knew that Israel would retaliate. And when Israel retaliates, we know that the media and the academy is going to turn against Israel. And so the plan was to murder as many Israelis as possible, hide as many terrorists as possible within civilians areas, get Israel to kill civilians because they have to if they're going to get at the terrorists, if they're going to kill Sinwar and his brother and all the leaders of Hamas, they hide. And of course, they hide the hostages among civilians too. All of that's a war crime. It's totally illegal under international law and the laws of war to hide fighters among civilians. And give the enemy a choice, either not to attack its commanders or to attack its commanders, knowing that there'll be some collateral deaths among civilians. So they purposely do that. And don't take that from me, by the way. You can get videotapes in memory.com and other organizations of Hamas leaders saying it. I mean, admitting they are very proud of the policy. Now, I don't know if they knew how many of the Hamas leaders would be killed. Virtually every Hamas leader who was active in promoting October 7th is now dead. And the few that remain will probably be killed. The Hezbollah leaders have also been killed. And so Israel has done a very good job in destroying the leadership of Hamas and Hezbollah, not all the fighters. Obviously, it hasn't done very much damage to the Houthis or to the Iranians. Of course, the Iranians are responsible for all of this. Without Iran, there'd be no Hamas, there'd be no Hezbollah, there'd be no Houthis. They are all surrogates of Iran, who regard the United States as the big Satan and Israel as the little Satan, but it focuses its attention on Israel because it's an easier and more popular target. So that was the plan. The plan was to get the world to turn against Israel. And Israel had very little choice. Could they have done something different? Yeah. They could have said, well, gee, it's too bad. We had 1,200 of our people killed, 250 of them taken hostage, but we'll just take the shot and just move on. They could have done that. And maybe the world would have been more supportive. But remember, Israel is a country of Holocaust survivors, and its motto is essentially never again. And the idea that it would sit back and simply accept a genocidal, and yes, I use that term, attempt to kill every Jew in Israel, and October 7th was simply a coming attraction of that. And again, don't believe me, listen to Hamas leaders, some of them dead, some still alive, who brag, we'll do it again, we'll do it again, we'll do it again and again and again. That October 7th was just a prelude to killing every Israeli. And so they don't hide their genocidal views. They kill Israelis deliberately and purposely, and they hope that Israel will kill Gazan civilians inadvertently and collaterally, because every time a Gazan civilian is killed, Israel is hurt, and Hamas benefits. And yes, it sounds awfully cruel and bloodthirsty, but it's true. Hamas wants Israel to kill Gazan civilians. The younger, the better. The more babies are dead, the more they can carry these babies out and show them to the CNN cameras, which are dying to show dead Gaza babies. By the way, I wrote about this 10 years ago, where I talked about the CNN strategy, or the dead baby strategy. I wrote about it years ago in a book about moral clarity. And it's been Hamas's strategy from the beginning. They don't deny it. And yet you wouldn't know that reading the New York Times. You wouldn't know it listening to CNN. You would think that Israel is just a bloodthirsty country that's starving its people. By the way, I'm going to Israel next week. I will be there for a week. I'm expecting to meet with all the leaders of Israel. And I've also asked for permission to go to Gaza. I want to go to Gaza. I want to go to see for myself. I know it's dangerous, but hey, that's life. And when you're somebody who cares deeply about an issue, you're prepared to undergo some risk. So I want to go to Gaza. Obviously, I want to be protected by the IDF, but I want to go and see the fruit stands and the vegetable stands. I've seen photographs and videos of the plentifulness of food. Now, how that food gets to people is Hamas's responsibility, and the responsibility of other groups within Gaza. But there's enough food in Gaza. It's expensive, but that's, again, Hamas raises the prices by stealing it. And there have been conflicting reports about how much Hamas steals, how much Hamas shoots people, how much hunger there actually is. I can tell you, I do not believe the reports of starvation. Why? Because I understand the issue of crying wolf. There have been claims of starvation from October 8th. Check it out. Check it out. You'll see. Before Israel sent a single soldier into Gaza, they were being accused of genocide. They were being accused of you name it. And they were being accused of using starvation as a weapon of war. Look, there are people in Israel who take the following position. I'm curious what you think of that position. On October 8th, there are some Israelis who have said, look, you have 250 of our innocent civilians, including children and babies, and you're going to starve them to death and kill them. We know, and they did. We know how many of them have been killed, many, many. So there are some Israelis who took the position that Netanyahu should have announced on October 8th, look, you have 250 of our innocent civilians, children, women, etc. And you're not going to feed them. You're not going to keep them alive. You're going to do terrible things to them. Tell you what, we're not going to send any food or medication into Gaza until you release all the hostages. So it's up to Hamas now. If Gazans starve, hey, that's on Hamas. We're willing to feed you, give you anything you need, medical care, everything. Just free the hostages. But until you free the hostages, don't count on us to feed you. We're not going to do it. Okay, that's an extreme position. I don't know whether it would have worked because Hamas might have said, good, 1 million Gazans will die. That's fine. Don't blame it on Israel. Even though we have the ability to stop it from happening, don't worry. The press will blame it on Israel. The academy will blame it on Israel. The media will blame it on Israel. CNN will blame it on Israel. Don't worry about it. So let Gazans die. That's probably what Hamas would have done. So maybe it wouldn't have worked. I don't know. When I was a professor at Harvard, I used to teach freshman seminar that is 18-year-old kids right out of high school, first-year Harvard students, many of them quite smart. And I would give them impossibly difficult moral dilemmas to solve. One of the dilemmas I gave them was as follows. You're the leader of the underground Jewish community in Germany. You're hiding, obviously, in the forests, but you can conduct raids. And you've been getting reports, confirmed reports, that hundreds of thousands of Jewish babies have been put in gas chambers and murdered, then their bodies burned and cremated. And there are still hundreds of thousands of Jewish babies in death camps waiting to be killed. And so this head of the underground says, hey, I have an idea. The Germans care deeply about their children. So why don't we start blowing up German kindergartens, particularly ones in Berlin that are close to some of the leaders of the Nazism, and we'll send a message to the Nazis. We're going to keep blowing up kindergartens. You can't protect all your kindergartens. We'll get through. We'll be able to kill 1,000 German babies and children. And we're going to do it unless you stop killing Jewish children. And assuming it works, is it something you would justify? You know, Dostoevsky put that question in The Brothers Karamazov as a moral question. He has Alyosha and Dmitri arguing with each other about the sad state of the world. And one says to the other, what if we could solve all the world's problems, make everybody in the world happy, but the only thing you have to do it is you see that child in her mother's arms crying? You see that child? You personally have to kill that child. And if you kill that child, the world will be happy and everybody will live good lives. Could you kill that one innocent child in order to end unhappiness in the world? Dostoevsky, the great teacher and philosopher, doesn't answer the question. He just poses it. And so I posed it to my students in the form of the Holocaust hypothetical. But of course, in Gaza, it's not a hypothetical. I mean, it will take the killing of civilians to destroy Hamas and perhaps to free the hostages. Let's remember also that right now on the table, there's a deal. Israel has offered a deal to release all the hostages now at one time and to end the war. And America supports that deal. And Steve Witkoff, who's a great guy, I know him, and he's a wonderful man. He's traveling all over. I don't know how he has the energy to do it. He was in Gaza 2 or 3 days ago. I think he's going to Russia now. The guy is an amazing energy bunny, and he has no rest. And I'm looking forward to meeting with him at some point and just learning whatever I can about what his processes have been. I'm hoping he's successful both in Russia. and in Israel. But right now, the Israelis have offered over and over again, they've offered a deal where 10 hostages, that's half of the 20 who are still alive, get returned in exchange for a 60 or 90-day ceasefire. And every time that deal is made, Hamas changes the terms and refuses. Again, don't believe me on this. Listen to the State Department, Witkoff, the people who are making the deal. They're telling you the same thing. It's Hamas who's not allowing the deal to go through. Yet the world is turning against Israel. The academy is turning against Israel. The media is turning against Israel. You have countries like England and France and Canada and New Zealand and Australia threatening to recognize a Palestinian state unless Israel ends its war. Uh, why would Hamas ever negotiate and end the war if they know that if they don't end the war, they're going to get a state? They're going to get recognition of a state. There's blood on the hands of England and France and Canada when they create disincentives to returning the hostages. And that's what they've done. They are disincentivizing Hamas from making any kind of deal. Why would you? Why would you make a deal if you're getting everything you want without giving anything? Remember that Israel has said in the past that they would recognize a Palestinian state as long as the Palestinians recognize Israel's right to exist, and they refuse to do it. I know. I personally spoke to Abbas about this on 2 occasions. I was with him at a very small dinner at a home in Washington just before he went to see President Trump. And I told him what the terms were that I know Israel was prepared to offer, and he said he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. He refused to do it. And now England says it's going to recognize Palestine without the Palestinians recognizing Israel. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you incentivize Hamas to go forward? And if you recognize a Palestinian state, what will that Palestinian state be? It will be Hamas state, sworn to have more October 7th. Would the United States ever recognize a neighboring country, Canada or Cuba, which was sworn to destroy it? It's absurd. And so, to the question, why is the world turning against Israel when Gaza is Hamas's fault, is it has very little to do with politics. It has everything to do with anti-Semitism. It has everything to do with the fact that for 2,000 years, Jews have been the most discriminated against minority in history. And there was a moratorium between the end of the Holocaust, 45, and probably 2005. But it's back. And you cannot understand the animosity of the world against the only Jewish state without understanding the deep roots of anti-Semitism throughout the world. If this were any other 2 countries, the Kurds and Armenia, there are so many other conflicts, the Russians, obviously in Ukraine, the Chinese and the Uyghurs, you wouldn't get this kind of animosity. But, the Palestinians are the luckiest people in the world that they have the Jews as their alleged oppressors. If they were being oppressed by Syria or by Turkey, they'd be the Kurds. Who's ever heard of the Kurds? The Kurds, there are many more of them. They're a much more distinct minority. They have been promised an independent state by treaty. Palestinians never were. They haven't, for the most part, used terrorism, and yet nobody cares about the Kurds. I have to tell you, I have a rule. If you care more about the Palestinians than you do about the Kurds, you're an anti-Semite. It's as simple as that. There's no justification for caring more about the Palestinians, who have the weakest human rights case in modern history, because they had an opportunity to have a state 1937, 1947, 1960, 2000, 2001, 2005, 2007, and they can still get a state if they did the right thing. Why should anybody care about the rights of the Palestinians who don't care about the rights of the Kurds and the Uyghurs and people of other parts of the world, African countries that are subject to real genocide? It's all about anti-Semitism. And the world has to face that reality. This is about the fact that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. If it weren't, we would not have this kind of immoral double standard that applies to Israel. All right, write me, tell me I'm wrong, give me give me evidence that I'm wrong, and I'll be happy to read your letters. Okay, let's turn to some letters. This is an interesting letter. A bigoted, non-binary person? How surprising. Okay, so the person who refused to sell me their perogi is non-binary. You would think that people who are discriminated against, like non-binary people, like transgender people, like gay people, like black people, would have a greater sensitivity toward anti-Semitism. And many do individually, but not their groups. The groups, the groups that represent gay people, transgender people, black people, for the most part, are rampantly anti-Semitic. Non-binary, if you went to Gaza, you know what they would do to you? If you're gay and you go to Gaza, pick the roof to be thrown off if you're not raped first. And so this idea that because you're non-binary, you're gay, somehow you're going to be more understanding or sympathetic to Jewish people just isn't true at all. And some of the worst problems have come from organizations like Black Lives Matter, the first groups that condemned Israel on October 7th. Among the first groups were gay groups, black groups, women's groups, transgender groups, alleged human rights groups who know nothing about human rights. So it's the hard left, and there's no mistake about that. Okay. Don't listen to your friends. Keep making noise. Yeah, I have no choice. Not only my friends, my family all says to me, you're on vacation, take it easy. It's not that I started. I went to buy, corn and pierogi. I didn't start this. The guy said, no, I won't. The person said, no, I won't sell you because you're a Zionist. He didn't say that, but that's what it was. Professor, would you have represented the Trump impeachment if you knew the sorrow and horrible discrimination you experienced today? How about Epstein? Would you have represented him too? I feel so sad for you. Don't feel sad for me. I'm a grown-up. I know what I was doing. I knew when I represented President Trump in his first impeachment that I would lose my friends on Martha's Vineyard. That's a balance that I would always strike in favor of the Constitution. The same thing with Epstein. So no, I don't regret it. And don't feel sorry for me. You don't. Real friends don't abandon you, but fake friends, people who are your friends because of what you could do for them, they're quick to do a cost-benefit analysis. Now it's more expensive to be a friend of Alan's than it was before, so we're going to stop being his friend. I don't miss people like that at all, and I'm going to continue to represent the most unpopular people in the world. That's my job. And I'm proud of it, and I'm going to do it to the day I die. Okay. While I hate the guy, the person said and did, and generally agree with you, I'm surprised you are claiming, correct me if I'm wrong, that politics is a protected race, religion, gender. And the question is, I don't know whether it is. It should be. And this may be the test case that determines whether it is. But it's not just politics. Being discriminated against because you believe in Zionism is like being discriminated against because you have a religious view of abortion or because you're kosher. What if there were a sign that said no Zionists allowed? Okay, ask that question. What if a sign said nobody who eats kosher? I'm going to sell to nobody who eats kosher. Now, not all Jews. I don't eat kosher. Not all Jews eat kosher. We won't sell to any Jew who wears a kippah. I don't wear a kippah. But if they did that, I think that would be illegal. So it's too easy to say that it's not a protected class. That issue will be resolved, and I think it may very well be resolved in favor of people who claim that they are Zionists on a religious basis. And for me, my Zionism is very, very closely associated with my Judaism. All right, here's a pun. I think it should be his prerogative. Prerogative. Okay, it shouldn't be, because he couldn't have that prerogative if he refused to sell to a black man or a gay man. So the question is, what he's doing is immoral. The question is it also illegal? And we'll find that out. Okay, come on. Your version of food in Gaza is ridiculous. We have heard from people who have actually been there and seen the video. Yeah, and it cuts both ways. I've seen videos of food stalls filled, markets filled with food. I heard recently from Witkoff and the U.S. ambassador to Israel, and they both said there is no starvation. There is some hunger. Again, uh, it's a matter of degree, and that could stop instantaneously if Hamas just gives back the hostages. So let's hope they do. Final question: what would you expect from Martha's Vineyard? It's a good question. I have to tell you, not all Martha's Vineyard, but the part of Martha's Vineyard that I live in, Chilmark, and the adjoining town of West Tisbury and Aquina, are probably the most intolerant parts of the country that I've ever been in. I've been in all over. I've been in Mississippi. I marched with civil rights. But I have to tell you, the people here are highly educated, highly opinionated, all radical, I mean, the most part, radical left-wing Democrats. And they are completely and totally intolerant. And people write to me and say, well, why would you stay on the island? I'm certainly not going to let them remove me from the island. It's a beautiful place. I have a home. I'm just half a mile away from the pond and the ocean. I walk every day. I love it. My family loves it. I'm staying on Martha's Vineyard and fighting back. That's what I do. I fight back. I hope you will join me. See you tomorrow.